All right, today we're talking about dating before and after marriage. And I'll confess to you that this is another one of those sermons where I feel unqualified to give the sermon. I'm not sure how well I do in this particular area. Honestly, there are a lot of times when I'll get ready for a sermon here and I feel like I'm probably learning as much or more than anybody else who hears this. Like I'm preaching to myself. You know, I've heard some people say maybe God calls some people to be pastors because they just need more help than other people. And so maybe, I kind of feel like that today, and so it's a learning experience for me. If you're married, you're going to pick up some info today that's been helpful to me already as a married guy about dating. And if you're dating, you're going to pick up some info that's going to help you to understand, who's the best spouse for you. Who's going to be a great partner for you? If you're single and happy about that, you're still included in this message because you have people in your life who are married or dating, and you can pass this information on to them, kids or friends of yours. And so everybody is included here. We want to make sure that everybody knows that. Everybody has a place in this Love, Sex, and Marriage series. I got a really sweet email from a young woman in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago who's single. And she emailed me and she said she's been listening to the podcast. And she appreciated the fact that we've included everybody, not just married people like a lot of churches do. And she said, this is one of the best compliments I've ever gotten. She was at a gas station listening to the podcast and was filling her car. And she was listening to the sermon, and she got in her car and drove away with the gas pump still in her car. $275 damage. She's like, thank God for Geico. And so, we want to make sure that everybody is included in this series. No matter what your relationship status is. This week is also another example of where I've bitten off so much that, I don't know that I can chew it all. I don't know that I can make everybody happy in the content that I'm presenting today, because there's so much content when we think about, dating before and after marriage. So I was in Barnes & Noble yesterday. I took a picture. This is just one of the aisles of the relationship self-improvement section. There are 3 shelves like that. And so if you feel like today, well, I didn't pick up exactly what I wanted, I didn't hear exactly some specific thing that would help me in my particular situation, there are lots and lots of resources available to you. There's probably no other subject that's been written about as much as love and relationships. Specifically, I have a couple of books that I recommended a few weeks ago, and if you're looking for some specific help, sermon's kind of a shotgun approach. Can't possibly speak to everybody's situation, but if you're looking for something specific, here are a couple of great books. The Zim of Love, A New Way of Understanding Marriage by Rob and Kristen Bell, and Love to Stay by Adam Hamilton. You can pick them up at Amazon or most bookstores. And whether you're married or not, you can learn things in here that will help in any long-term relationship. So hopefully those would be good resources for you. Okay, so we're going to dive in. First, for those who are dating before marriage, there are a couple of major pitfalls that people who are dating can fall into. And I got married later than a lot of people do, and so, kind of lived in this world for a while, and lots of friends still do, and I found this to be true. One pitfall is settling for somebody who is less than the best for you. How many of you have seen somebody who you just know they settled? 2.3 people, thank you so much. You just seen somebody, you just know they settled. Time went on and they settled. Well, that's one pitfall. The other pitfall is the opposite. Having unrealistic expectations for who is best for you. It's like, I won't settle, but I won't get married unless it's Brad Pitt. Something like an expectation like that. Like there's a tension between these two things. There's middle ground between these two pitfalls that people who are dating have to navigate, and it can be tough. And so how do you find the middle ground? How do you know when, I don't want to settle, so I want somebody I know I deserve. And it's not said in an arrogant way, but I want somebody I know I deserve, who will love me the way I deserve to be loved. And at the same time, you have realistic expectations for who that person is. Well, there's one way, at least one way I've found, to avoid both of those mistakes. And there are lots of things that we could say today, and hopefully you'll pick up some practical tips, but there's a main idea that I want to make sure we all hear today, whether we're dating before marriage or after marriage, and it's this. A pastor named Andy Stanley gave a sermon about the myth of Mr. Right. Or if you're looking for a woman, Mrs. Right. The myth of Mr. Right. And there's a myth in our culture that says if I meet somebody and we just kind of hit it off, like if we feel instant chemistry, and just like electricity, it's just buzzing, and we connect like that, then our relationship won't require that much work in order to make it work. You know what I'm talking about? There's this assumption that if we just have the right chemistry, then our relationship will just be easy. And there are butterflies, and our relationship will just work if I meet that person, Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. And Andy says, well, chemistry is very important. You can't manufacture it. You want that heart-to-heart connection. But it's a total myth that there's this one person out there and you're just going to have electricity with that person and then the relationship's just going to fall into place and be easy and not require any kind of work. It's just a total myth. And so Andy says it like this. If you're keeping notes in YouVersion, you could jot this down. It's kind of hard to follow, so kind of hang with me. Are you who the person you are looking for is looking for? Does it make sense? To combat the myth of Mr. Right or the myth of Mrs. Right, that everything's just going to fall into place if we have chemistry and I'm getting endorphin hits. Actually, there's a way deeper reality to making a marriage work that we're going to unpack throughout this sermon. Are you who the person you are looking for is looking for? And so, in other words, when we're dating or even after marriage, instead of always expecting there to be this chemistry, like these firing back and forth and electricity, maybe there's a deeper question that has something to do with who I am and what I have to offer to a relationship, who I'm becoming, my character, my growth. Am I the kind of person the person I'm looking for is looking for? Does everybody follow what that means? It's kind of confusing. Are you who the person you are looking for is looking for? It's about growth. We live in a consumer culture. We all know that. We probably don't realize how much that thinking infects all areas of our lives. I mean, of course, we know if we want a Blu-ray player, you can jump online and you can read the specs and compare different ones, and then you can go to Best Buy if you want and see something or some other store, and we know that's how we can buy a product in our culture. And it's interesting, in the last few decades, lots of authors have noticed that we're seeming to apply that consumer mentality to all kinds of areas of our lives. Not just buying a product. We apply that to, restaurants the same way we apply it to churches now. And people will kind of shop for a church and hop around and look for a church. We also apply it to dating and to marriage. And so there are people who are dating before they're married, or there are people who are married, and they have this consumer mentality of what's in it for me. And of course, none of us would admit that. But so often, in my experience as a pastor, when I sit down with a couple who's struggling, within a couple of minutes, you start to pick this up, that there's a consumer mentality going on here. There's been a separation in the relationship, and they're both asking, what's in it for me? And my needs aren't being met. In a sense, like, this product I purchased is not working the way I wanted it to, and I'm unhappy now, and now I want a refund. That's just the way that a lot of us, without even knowing it, we approach relationships because we live in such a consumeristic culture. So Andy asks, what kind of a person are you? Are you becoming the kind of person that the person you want is interested in? One of our values in one church is no perfect people allowed. And we say, in connection with that, I don't have to pretend to be perfect because I'm growing. I'm growing as a person, so I don't have to pretend to be a super Christian, have it all together, and have a fake plastic Christian smile every Sunday morning and act like everything's okay, because I'm growing. The theological word for that is the word sanctification. To be sanctified. It means to be made holy, but that's like a big religious buzzword. What it really means is to be set aside for God's purpose. It means that God's kind of growing me closer and closer to God over time. And God can rely on me more. I'm more reliable to God to live out the words of the Lord's Prayer, to follow Jesus. I'm just on a daily basis, I'm growing, I'm changing in my character, and I'm more reliable to God. And so that's what this is all about. Instead of, it's like shopping for a mate, like shopping for a Blu-ray player. The big question, either before marriage or after marriage, is who am I? Who am I becoming? What do I bring to a relationship? Am I the kind of person that the person I wants to be with? And I've officiated about 20 to 25 weddings so far in my ministry, and almost all of them have been for great couples who I knew were great for each other, and they're going to have a long, happy life together. I say this with regret. There was one exception. In the 20 to 25, there was one exception. And I'm just going to be honest with you, one of my struggles throughout life has been being a bit of a pushover, being a people pleaser, wanting to make people happy. And as I've gotten older and had more painful life experiences, I've learned that that's just not a very good choice. And so that was true with this couple. I got a call from a young woman who contacted me and was looking for a pastor to officiate their wedding. And I said, well, when I officiate a wedding, I have premarital counseling. I like to have 4 premarital counseling sessions with the couple before we do the wedding. And she's like, well, our wedding's 3 weeks away. And we just kind of drug our feet getting a pastor, and so we don't really have time for that. Red flag, right? And so me, trying to make people happy, is, okay, well, let's meet once. And we'll just get to know you, and we can talk about just the basic meaning of marriage. And so we met at a coffee shop, and she's a Christian woman. She wanted a Christian wedding, and so I talked to her on the phone, and then I met her and her husband-to-be at the same time at this coffee shop. So the guy strolls up and acted like it was the biggest inconvenience of his life to be there. And, I understand some people are hostile to religion. Some people just aren't comfortable around a pastor. I got it. So, story of my life, So I'm like, hey, man, just making small talk and sports and all this kind of stuff. And finally said, I know, some people are uncomfortable with all of the religious aspects of a wedding ceremony, but just wanted to meet and talk about just the basic meaning of marriage. Just on a human level, what marriage means and why you guys love each other, and just get to know you a little bit. Just kind of innocent kind of conversation like that. And so I asked them, well, why do you want to get married to each other? And the bride-to-be, she just gushes with excitement, talks about how great he is and how much she loves him and how much she wants to spend her life with him. And then I asked him the same question. Awkward pause. He gave, I don't know, a 3 to 4 word answer. Didn't seem to be that into it. I was taken aback by it. Like, I've never experienced anything like this before. Like, okay. I just wonder what she's thinking right now. And then I just asked, well, okay, well, what does marriage mean to you guys? Like, why do you want to be married? What's it mean to be married? And so the bride-to-be, she just goes on about love and faithfulness and growing old together. It just gives this beautiful picture of what a long marriage is. I asked the groom the same question. Awkward pause. A couple of cliches. In the back of my mind, I'm wondering, what is she thinking right now? Like, she seems to be a nice person, seems to be together, socially well-adjusted. What's she thinking about his answers? The meeting just kind of went like that. Now, I did something the next day I've never done before. After meeting with any married couple, I called her. Talk about an awkward conversation. I called her, and I was as gentle as I possibly could be, and I said, I just noticed. It was like, hey, like over the phone, like just trying to, how do you ease into this kind of a topic? Like, I noticed that, he just didn't seem to be that plugged in yesterday when we were meeting. Like, talking about love and talking about marriage, and you gave great answers that anybody would love to hear, and he just didn't say a whole lot. And she's like, yeah, I know. I told him afterwards, you didn't even answer Ryan's questions. And I said, oh, well, how do you feel about that? And she's like, oh, I know he loves me. And she's making excuses for this guy. Somewhere along, and I knew her parents' story. She's repeating the mistakes of her mother. My heart just broke for her as we're talking on the phone because I know where this is headed. I'm thinking, you're a nice person. You deserve to be loved. You deserve a good guy. He's not it. Run away screaming. You ever felt like that towards a friend of yours? You just know this is not going to work out. I did the wedding. Shouldn't have. Honestly, I regret it. And I don't know their story, to be honest with you. I hope it's going better than what it looked like it would. But it was an experience for me where I saw firsthand what can happen. Even if you're a really nice person and you're a loving person, but there's something in your life, there's a hole there to where you're willing to give yourself to somebody who doesn't really love you the way you deserve. And there's some kind of healing that needs to take place, but it hasn't. Therefore, you're exposed and open to a guy like that who doesn't deserve to be with a good person. And this is family worship today. We have young ladies in the service. You have young guys in the service. And as you grow older, this is going to become more and more important. You get into junior high and high school, and parents are freaked out when you start dating. This is so important because if you don't have a good sense of who you are and that you deserve love and that you deserve somebody who's good for you, then you can just kind of fall for anybody and fall into the same trap that this young woman did. It's an extreme example, but it's just a clear illustration of how important it is that we are becoming, whether we're dating before marriage or after marriage, that we're on this continual journey of growth, that we're becoming the kind of person that God created us to be. And we're becoming the kind of person that the person we're looking for is looking for. Paul says it like this. He kind of warns single people about the difficulty of marriage. And then in 1 Corinthians 7, he gives some great advice. He says, "A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes. But he must belong to the Lord." Verse 40, "In my judgment," and this is Paul, he's a single guy. He's like, "In my judgment, she's happier if she stays as she is. And I too think that I have the Spirit of God." So Paul's like, marriage is hard. So you might even be better off staying single. Like, how romantic is that, right? Paul's not the most romantic writer in the world. But he does say she can marry anybody she wishes, but he must belong to the Lord. If you're looking for somebody to be a good partner for life and you're a believer, you're a Christian, you want to follow Jesus, that's kind of a core value you want to find in somebody else. That person shares that with you. That person belongs to the Lord. He or she wants to follow Jesus too. Because if that's not the case, you're on this journey of becoming. You're open to God. You're open and receptive. Like we talked about last week, during worship, sometimes I'll just hold out my hands like this. Because it's a posture of openness and receptivity. If you want to live like this and follow Jesus and live like this and have a spiritual connection, but the person you're with doesn't, it's like you're not sharing the core value in your life. That person doesn't share that value with you. And I know from people who are married now and who don't have that, that's tough. It's difficult. And so that person that you're looking for, you want them to be on the same journey with Christ that you're on as well. So before we move on to marriage, some dating tips quickly. Let God grow you and heal you. Are you on a journey of becoming? Because of sanctification, the good news is God wants to grow you. You're not stuck where you are. You're not assigned to this place in life that you are, and you can never grow beyond that. It's awesome news that you can grow. So are you letting God grow you and heal you? If you need to talk to a counselor, are you willing to do that? Are you open and receptive to that? Or if you need to read Love to Stay or the Zim of Love, are you open to doing that? And just kind of heal. If you've had bad relationship experiences in the past, are you willing to heal from those? To where you're not always bringing your past pain into your current relationship, and you can just kind of start over new. Are you willing to let God grow you and heal you? And then if you're doing that, as you're becoming the person God created you to be, and your heart is getting healthier and healthier, now you have a better gauge to tell who's good for you and who's not. You can listen to your heart. Listen to your heart when he's calling for... I heard that song yesterday, actually. It was like great timing. Listen to your heart, because that's why I don't sing in the worship band. By the way, you just discovered that. Because if you're getting more healthy and you're becoming, you can just kind of feel it. If that person's playing games with you, you can just kind of feel it. If that person's really insecure and doesn't want to commit and is not really able to give himself to somebody else, you can just kind of feel that. If you listen to your heart, your gut, or however you want to say it, but if you're getting healthier and healthier and becoming, then you can listen. And it's a lot easier to tell who is right for you. And then, like we just said, find somebody who shares your values. Common values that are really important to agree on in marriage are values about faith. And it's not just a big preacher statement. Faith is really important. It's like your value system. And you really want to agree with that person. Kids, how many kids do you want to have? How many of us realize that's an important discussion to have before you're married, right? Finances. What are your goals for your finances? How are you going to manage money? Shared account, separate accounts, how many hours a week do we work? What are our goals? Life goals in general. When do you want to retire? Where do you want to live? What do you want your lifestyle to be like? Your schedule. This is one a lot of people miss. Like if one of you is really outgoing and the other one is kind of a homebody, that's going to be an issue. If for one of you, your idea of spending quality time together is sitting on the couch and reading a book together, and the other one's like, I want to go party, happy hour, that really is an issue. So you want to talk about the values that you both have and see if you can share values together. But the main point I want to make is, are you becoming the person you're looking for is looking for? Now, going on to married people. Married folks, I've just been talking about people who are dating before marriage. Out of everything I just said, is there anything that doesn't apply to marriage? Married people, did you hear anything I just said that doesn't apply? I think everything we just talked about applies to a marriage relationship the same way that it does to a dating relationship before marriage. Can married people fall into a consumer mentality? I know it's foggy outside. Can married people fall into a consumer mentality? Yes. Like within the first day of marriage? You know what I mean? It's just so pervasive in our culture. What's in it for me? Can married people ignore relational problems because neither one of them are healthy enough to really deal with them and see how big of a problem they are? So if you're married, here are a couple of common pitfalls for married couples. Number one, taking each other for granted. Now that you're married, you get the piece of paper, you get your witnesses, signatures, the ink's dry. Hey, we can take each other for granted now and just assume that I can just be whoever I want to be now. I can do whatever I want because this person is with me now. A second one, letting busyness prevent us from continually discovering each other. Letting the busyness of life distract us from the fact that we had a wedding, but that doesn't mean we know everything there is to know about each other. I'm with this person now who is a deep well, and I now have the opportunity to discover, but we just let busyness kind of crowd out those things. Marriage is an opportunity to discover this person for the rest of your lives together. There's the Journey song, Faithfully. You know what I'm talking about? I don't want to sing a second song during the sermon today. So there's this line that goes, it's about a musician who travels, and he's away from home a lot, and then he comes back home. There's this awesome line, and it's one of the best lines of any love song I've ever heard. It's, I get the joy of, do you know it? Of rediscovering you. How awesome is that? That's romantic right there. I get the joy of rediscovering you. What an awesome view of marriage, and not taking each other for granted and not letting busyness prevent us from discovering each other. So maybe a marriage is kind of like whitewater rafting. How many have gone whitewater rafting before? And so in whitewater rafting, the point of going is that the water is choppy. And the water is white because it's hitting the rocks and bouncing up and the foam splashing everywhere. That's what makes it fun. And if we get into a place in marriage where no matter how long we've been married, 1 year, 10 years, 30 years, and we feel like, well, I've just discovered all there is to know about this person. First of all, it's not true. Because all of us are kind of continually changing anyway. Even if you did learn everything there is to know about a person, which is impossible, well, every day we change a little bit in life. We all change over time. And so maybe marriage is kind of like rafting, and the water is always moving and swirling, and you never quite know where it's going to go. We can't take it for granted. And we can't get busy, looking at this section over here, and then all of a sudden we biff because we missed this section over here. You just kind of have to watch where the water is going. What if marriage is kind of like whitewater rafting? And it's just always changing. And so you can look at your partners as somebody, this person's always interesting. Because none of us remains the same. We always change. And I get the joy of rediscovering this person as we navigate through this river. For a couple who wants to follow Jesus, there is a truth that's deeper than that. That we said earlier that the theological word for growth is sanctification. It's what God wants to do in our lives. He wants to grow us, sanctify us. What if you're married, what if your marriage is God's ultimate way of sanctifying you? What if God has put you in relationship with this other person, and the primary purpose of this thing, this relationship called marriage, is that you could help each other to grow, that you could partner with God to sanctify each other in this marriage. In Love to Stay, one of the books I recommended, Adam Hamilton writes this, that at the end of your lives, the end of your relationship together, what if you could say this? How awesome is this? Across the course of our love and our life together, you've made me a better person. Is that a different view of marriage than the consumeristic mentality in our culture? How beautiful is that? Isn't that great? That at the end of our love together, just so inspiring, you could look at each other and say, you've made me a better person. Together, you and I, how beautiful, we've partnered with God to help God work in each other's lives. And we're better people, and our family's better, and we've made our world better, our coworkers are better, because we have each other. And God is sanctifying us through our marriage. Some tips for dating after marriage. I'm preaching to the choir here, preaching to myself. 1 Corinthians 7, again, Paul writes this to married couples. The gist is that there's this rhythm in life to making a marriage work. Because you love each other, you want to meet each other's needs, and you establish this rhythm in life of meeting each other's needs. He says the husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife. We're in the family service, right? And likewise, the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. That's a really spiritual life right there. Then come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. We have lots of needs in life, don't we, married people? Hello? Right? We have lots of needs in life. So this, you read this and you think, okay, he's talking about one thing. Yeah, but there are lots of needs that we have in our lives. Needs for companionship, listening, encouragement, somebody to walk through our journey with us and share our joys and our fears. We have all kinds of needs. And Paul says to married couples, meet each other's needs. Don't treat each other like you're like a Blu-ray player that you got at Best Buy and you're trying to figure out if you really like it or not. And this consumeristic mentality, but meet each other's needs. Here are a couple of ways to do that. One is a monthly date night. Once again, I'm preaching to myself here. Monthly date night. It's a good idea. Some people already have that in your lives, and you get that as a part of a rhythm of your life. Some don't, but it's just something that's regular. It's something that's scheduled. And some people say, well, I don't want something that's scheduled. I get that, but scheduling something also provides a way for more spontaneous things to happen. So if you're getting together on a monthly basis and it's a special time for you both, it's easier, because of that structure perhaps, it's easier to be more spontaneous in your relationship. Structure can lead to spontaneity. For example, how many of you agree that Matt is an awesome guitar player? You agree with me? So I dabble on guitar, which is not even fair for me to say next to Matt, playing guitar. And so a few weeks ago, I saw a Facebook post on Matt's Facebook page that said he's going through a new course to practice a certain amount of time every day and become a better guitar player. And I'm like, dude, stop it. I don't even want to see that, right? You know what I mean? Because he's already amazing, but yet he's going to go through this structured routine of getting better, which I'm not sure how that's possible for him to get better, but he's going to have this structured routine to do that. And people could say, well, I just want to wail on guitar. I just want to be spontaneous. It's just not going to work. People who really know how to play guitar, that's how they learn. There's this structure that helps them get better and better at it. So perhaps the structure of a monthly date night would just create the schedule, the rhythm in your life that would help to breed more spontaneity in your life. But that's not enough either. So maybe a daily rhythm of connecting would be a way to date after marriage. Hannah and I had the privilege of being invited by a Christian couple we really respect up to Sedona for a couple of days this past week. And these are people who have been pretty influential. I read magazine articles about this couple 10 or 15 years ago in the Christian world. And so we've been privileged to get to know them, and they were nice enough to invite us. And we were talking about the sermon this week. I told them, we talk about dating after marriage, and I'm not sure I'm that good at it. And so we had a good conversation about it. And they're busy people. They work hard. So listen to and they're about 50 years old, both of them. Listen to the daily rhythm they've developed. And if you're married, your dating may not look exactly like this, but it's just a great example to think about. So we're talking about how to keep romance alive and stay connected and grow and keep the excitement going and reconnect even in a busy lifestyle. And they said, here's what they do. Every night, and they've made it a point to do this, they sit on the couch for half an hour and they talk to each other, which for some of us, that just sounds impossible to do. But they said, it's important. Our relationship is important enough that we're going to build this daily rhythm into our lives. Maybe they crack open a bottle of wine. It's not drudgery, right? We're sitting together and we're trying to enjoy ourselves just for a half an hour and talk and catch up on life. And then after that, before they go to bed, here's what they do. The husband looks into the wife's eyes and he puts his hand on both sides of her face like this, just for a second, and just provides just this tender touch on both sides of her face. And then he kisses both of her cheeks, and they go to bed. And it's a daily rhythm of connecting and reminding themselves in all of their busyness that you really are the most important thing in this world to me. And, because we have all kinds of distractions that would, lead our eyes, to all kinds of other places, but I want you to know that you're the most important person to me. It takes a few seconds. The half an hour conversation, obviously that takes longer, but this just tender touch, looking in each other's eyes. Isn't that beautiful? Just a daily rhythm they've created of continuing to date after marriage. If you were hoping for some other kind of information about this today, again, Love to Stay, The Zim-Zum of Love, those could be great books for you. There are all kinds of resources. If my sermon just kind of brought it up to the surface, and you would leave here and you would read some kind of relationship book that would help you specifically for your situation, I would consider that a success. But I want to close with this story. For a second, you might wonder, why would Ryan tell a story like this for a topic like this? But I think it gets to the heart of this question. Are you becoming the kind of person, the person you wants to be with? Talked about my grandmother so many times in the 2-year history of this church, but it's applicable here as well. She was what's called a licensed lay speaker in the United Methodist Church, which meant when the pastor was gone, she would give the sermon. And I was born out of wedlock. I grew up with my mom and my grandparents until I was 6 years old. And I remember her giving sermons in church. I remember her leading Bible studies. And we had some guys in our family, uncles who were part of a different denomination, and they gave my grandma all kinds of grief, just laying the guilt on, because they didn't believe that it was a woman's place to teach in church. A woman shouldn't have authority over a man, was their view. And I remember when I was a teenager, and we had moved away at this point, I was back visiting her, we just had a conversation between the two of us. She was always in the kitchen. It was just the role that she played in her Appalachian culture. And I remember we were talking one day, and she was telling me about this experience of feeling like God had called her to ministry, to give sermons and to give Bible studies. And even though these guys in our family gave her a lot of grief, and she said she struggled with it for several years. Till finally she said she was standing at the kitchen stove one day, because that was the kind of the stereotypical role there. And she said she was thinking about it and praying about it and kind of depressed about it, wondering, am I disobeying God? Am I bad because I teach Bible studies and give sermons? And she said she had an incredibly strong experience. And this is a church where questions and doubts are welcome, so when people hear this, they think, take it in different ways. But she said she had this experience of feeling as though God were saying to her in an incredibly powerful way, you belong to me. You belong to me. It's family worship. We have kids in second grade. We have people who are 70 years old in this service. One of the reasons I love that story so much is because it gets to the heart of the issue. She didn't hear God saying to her, yeah, you can give sermons. It wasn't even that specific. It was something deeper than that. If you've seen those pictures of the icebergs, and then you see the picture under the water, like this wasn't up at the surface. This was like way under the water, this statement. You belong to me. That's true of you. God, the same way that God impressed that upon my grandmother's heart, God wants to impress that on your heart right here where you sit. You belong to me. If you're single and you'd rather not be, and you kind of feel lonely, and you're looking for somebody, and you're trying to figure out, well, I don't want to settle, but I also don't want to have unrealistic expectations. Where's that middle ground? Well, hear God saying to you, you belong to me. And if your identity is rooted in the fact that you are a beloved son or daughter of God, you know that you deserve somebody who loves you like that. You deserve somebody who values you as somebody who is a loved son or daughter of God. If you're married and you're struggling right now and you're kind of fighting the consumer mentality, but at the same time maybe you feel like you're getting the short end of the stick in the relationship and you're trying to grow and you're trying to become the person, well, the central truth for you is the same one. You belong to me. And whatever is going on in your marriage, that is the bedrock of it. If you both realize that, both of us belong to God. We're both loved sons or daughters of God. And we can start there. We both deserve to be respected on that level. We both deserve to be loved on that level. We both deserve to be given time and affection and tenderness on that level. We both deserve to be rediscovered on that level. It just kills this consumer mentality. It's like a cancer in relationships because now we're both equals. We both deserve love. And now we both have the opportunity and the calling and the privilege to let God's love for us flow through us and share that love with one another. And we can be creative, we can read books, we can come up with all kinds of ways to have a structure and a rhythm in our lives, but we'll know the bedrock truth in our relationship is that each of us belong to God.